right. It's a pleasure to be here to share this panel with all of you. I don't really know why it's me, the one who's giving this introductory talk, because there's experts in the room and in the panel in the field of tech transfer. I can only share you a little bit through my my last trajectory and my experience during the last years, from research to management of support organizations in the field of research, BIOCAT or Science Park, or also lately, a couple of years ago and last year, BIST, to now moving on to what is considered or called the dark side, which is becoming an investor in the field of life sciences, a venture capital, and we are presently raising a venture capital fund to invest in life sciences, both here in Spain and also internationally, Alta Life Sciences. So I've been asked to talk for like 15 minutes to set, I understand, a little bit the ground for what will be the later discussion. So I wanted to start, I don't know if you, could we turn this off maybe? Because,
I don't know if we can.
si no es igual, eh? So anyway, I'm not the one to read, that needs to explain to you that certainly science, relation of science and research organizations such as these ones to the private sector or to the economic sector comes both ways. First, on one side, the way science is financed through either public funds or, right, governments or, thank you. Don't sleep, please, it's 3 o'clock. Ara, perfecta. Government organizations or private companies, and this has in certain countries, and we can discuss this later maybe, represented really a huge amount of investment. In the US, only about $19 billion have been invested into research, and that has given out results such as not only in the advancement of research, but also at the number of spin-off or patent companies or patents that, as you know, are the vehicle through which research is actually transferred towards the private sector. So we see here different countries that have been particularly successful in the number of spin-offs. Spin-offs have reported back to their research organizations in many countries a huge amount of investment, so they are a particularly very strong source of income for research organizations. In this country, we're lagging a little bit behind, and I think it's in the interest of all of us to really pursue this path further, not only through the creation of spin-offs, many times the chosen option to valorize or to develop particular patents, but also many times through the licensing of patents to larger organizations. Certain countries have been particularly successful, and Israel is always put into as an example of the number of patents and the number of spin-offs that are generated from research organizations. Here, this is the number of patents normalized by the GDP of countries. So we see countries such as Israel, Korea, for instance, that are particularly successful. Spain is somewhere here in the middle, right? But there's a need of a combination of different ingredients for these things to thrive, and it's not only having a good research, which is obviously a must, but also a series of conditions that have to be aligned, right? So on one hand, we know research has one of the really a large rate of research organizations in place, very good ones, like the ones we might have also here in Catalonia. They do have a strong supportive government, and you know there's the figure or of the chief scientific officer, which is someone who everything that has to do with science reports to this person, and this person reports to the parliament, not to the government. So it's part of a country strategy, but also a network of, this has given yield to a network of different startups and then attracted different investments through either venture capitalists, IPOs, that you know it's becoming public, particularly in the US. Israel is the largest country outside the US who in the number of companies that are publicly traded in the US market. And So this is a combination of elements that have made the startup ecosystems in Israel particularly interesting. And I'm sure that we will discuss different ingredients that are needed or programs that have been successful either here or in other countries, potentiating startup creation and tech transfer. Europe has never been characterized by being by being home to what's called market disruptive innovation, right? All the Ubers, Netflix, Alibabas, Airbnbs, all these companies that have really disrupted and created new markets. None of them has been created in Europe. So we do have a problem on how we really turn ideas into big projects. And so projects that have an impact, that scale up really fast, that help create new jobs and opportunities. And Europe has been trying to develop different schemes through either the H2020 program, through the European Investment Bank and Fund, to incentivize these things to happen. But it still remains what's called the European paradox, that the level of science has never been really correlated with the capacity to generate innovations. So I would like to we talk about innovation many times, right? And we all have in mind different images from what we believe innovation is. What it's true is that the whole concept of how to innovate or how science can have an impact in economic growth has been changing dramatically during the last years. And I like always to set this scene saying, the concept of what's being called open innovation versus the linear, like starting here and then transferring and going to one company and in a linear kind of process, to more open networked process, the same way that science become open, and we will discuss this now in a minute. Also, the conversion of different disciplines, how this is generating and impacting how we understand innovation. And last but not least, obviously, going beyond the actual product and into how we innovate in new business models to be competitive. So, also you know much better than I do that science is not the way it used to be regarding openness, right? We're talking about open access, open data, open science. Publications 15 years ago wasn't the way it is right now. Involving end user in the health sector, which I have a bias, and most of my slides and referrals will have to do with the life science sector, right? But engaging the public as being, or engaging the patients. So the way science is carried out already is completely different from what it was doing. So if we understand the classical, and this is the classical in life sciences, linear approach to basic research, discovery and development, ending up in a product that has an impact on treatment, in this case into the health systems. From many years ago, and you won't be able to see this, but the initiatives have been moving towards the sharing of ideas, the sharing of data, and the sharing of tools. So from what was like a close partnership between a company and a research group, started moving towards the consortia, the big consortia that have been incentivized with different fundings, right? Science consortia developing the large projects like the Human Genome Project, the HubMap, the big Proteome Project, the large consortia that most of you, I'm sure, are involved in, towards also open source projects in the end, and the creation of challenges, crowdsourcing strategies from companies to really try to capture and generate innovation from day zero, instead of going through this linear approach that it's nowadays not competitive anymore. And this also has the component that if you're launching a challenge, a prize, or a problem to be solved by research, you obviously need to address it from different disciplines. And this is a chart that represents how often different disciplines are co-cited in scientific publications. And you can see that most of publications nowadays, they obviously involve different sciences, involving also some of them from material sciences to life sciences and humanities. Because we are addressing, as I said, needs or challenges or problems that obviously, as Karl Popper says here, we're not studying any specific matter, but we need to study problems. And obviously problems go across disciplines. And this is from an issue of nature that was addressing interdisciplinarity, has a strong impact not only on the subjects we're discussing today, but in the whole subject of how we train our researchers, how we train our future scientists on dealing with all the needs to address particular problems, and also not only about disciplines, but the kind of skills that you need to kind of be successful in this multidisciplinary world, right? And that's why initiatives such as BIST are so relevant, to try to offer umbrellas where these kind of interactions between people from different backgrounds that see problems in a different way can address them together. And I like to always use this slide in the convergence, for instance, in health, in the field of medicine. It's really a very exemplary case of what I'm mentioning, right? So the P4, what's understood as P for medicine, which is predictive medicine, personalized, preventive, and participatory. It's not anymore about life sciences. It obviously has a strong relation toward genomics and the ACGT nucleotides, but it has a lot to do about other technologies, obviously digital technologies, the binary numbers 0-1, meaning internet, the mobile connectivity, how do you translate images, how do you translate data. So the convergence of this huge amount of data around other disciplines is transforming completely, not only research, but particularly where are we going to see the next opportunities or the next successful projects. And this is just a chart to see. This represents 100 startups that in the field of AI, artificial intelligence, that are transforming healthcare, from how you deal with patient data to how do you do your drug discovery and you become more efficient using large computing power or different relationships, for instance, with patients. Nowadays, every time we see more companies not dealing with any specific either product or service, but dealing with the problems, diabetes, neurodegeneration, and how do you solve that problem as a company, including different value propositions that are based on genomics, but they also have the digital component, they have the nanotechnology component many times in the delivery approach, for instance. So all of this is the space where we have to thrive and succeed. And that's why the kind of business model that you have and you provide to your project is crucial to be able to succeed. And back again in the life sciences, but this is kind of common for other sectors too. Business model, as I was saying, don't deal anymore about product, because you need to differentiate yourself from the other value propositions out there with different services and solutions to the problem you are addressing. It's not about, in our case, treating patients, but starting far ahead, focusing prevention, focusing really on life habits and real-time management of what's happening. And obviously through connectivity, addressing the problem anywhere and not necessarily in the hospital, which is where the healthcare is obviously more expensive. So as Osterwalder says, the guy that, I don't know if you're familiar with the business model canvas approach to how to deal with your business models, products are a commodity. I mean, you are supposed to have a good product, otherwise no one would be talking to you. But beyond that, you really need to come up with a great business model that's how you're going to keep ahead to the competition that you have in front of you. So I just wanted to finish with like 2 slides from now, and this tries to represent the value of death here, from the perspective of someone who might invest in your project. And so why is someone going to invest in your project? Who is going to invest and at what stage of development, right? So I have to admit, I've moved to the venture capital world only like 10 months ago or so. So I can offer you the perspective of someone who's been on both sides, not really as an entrepreneur, but really helping entrepreneurs and scientists to put together good pitches, good proposals, and now seeing really what's the need. And I know venture capitalists are not normally very well known or very popular, but well, they are really looked for because obviously they have the money, but many times You also have to understand the situation of what a venture capitalist looks for, because they have to offer also returns to their investors. They are investing some money that has been invested in them, and that is also very relevant for you to know what are the dynamics that moves them. And not only venture capitalists, but who the different agents out there that might invest in your company, depending on the stage of development that you are at. So we are here in a research group, so in a research institute, so really at the very early stage, if we are talking about maturity as of closer to the private sector, right, of a project. But basically, once you have finance with your public grants, etc., your research, and you want to start developing maybe a proof of concept to try to prove a hypothesis towards maybe a new potential marker or a new device, etc., there are different schemes out there at the pre-seed phase, and at the very early stage, the type of investors you are going to be facing are obviously, once you've completely run out of money, your family and your friends, then you start looking for business angels, who are people who invest their own money, and we're going to see a little bit what is the dynamics that move them. Later on, then you can start talking to venture capitalists. Obviously, you should start talking to venture capitalists from the beginning, but there's always this risk-reward ratio that has to match with the risk-reward ratio of the investor, right? Be it a business angel or a venture capital. So normally, venture capitalists, some of them invest in seeds, some in later stages, some depending on the funds, they have one dynamic or another, but they will always want to look for certain returns. And then obviously you can move on to venture capitalists who invest in later stages and eventually either be acquired or have an M&A with a larger company, or why not go public either here or elsewhere to be able to finance your project to the end, right, to the market. So this is not really a secret, and it will be kind of obvious, but I think it's good to have in mind, right? What are angel investors mainly looking for? Or general investors, you'll see later on VCs, but mainly what we could say, right? Both any investor, the first thing they will invest is in the team. And this might seem obvious, but I never realized it as much as now. And talking you from my personal experience, we are raising a venture capital fund. 2 of my partners are from US, right? One of them has been a venture capitalist for 30 years in Silicon Valley. So the guy has seen it all. He's invested in 160 companies, so he doesn't look at a single paper, you just tell him and he's like this. And he always says this, he's like, I invest in athletes, that's the word he uses, right? So if I see someone that I can see has the right attitude and the right ingredients, even if this project might not look well in the beginning, I'm sure he will have the capacity to turn it around. So it's not about a single person, but also the capacity of these people to surround him or herself with the right team, with the passion, the commitment, and the quality to really make this project a success. You also want to address a big market, right? A market opportunity, because you really have to promise your investors that you are going to give a return. You need to explain why and how. Not why, sorry, how, right? How are you going to do it? A clear business plan or a business model of how you're going to capture this value of this huge market you're addressing. In our fields, in new technology-based companies, our assets is the IP. So the technology you have, or the intellectual property that protects you from other competitors out there. And this is really relevant. Once you do an investment, you want, as an investor, check the IP of the company. You normally ask IP attorneys, really good lawyers that know about this, to really check whether that is really well protected, and that's the tool you're going to have to really then cash this and have a return. Valuation is also a very relevant issue, and valuation is how much, and this is not really a science, they always say it's an art, right? How much a company is worth, then with the number of shares of the company, how much a share of the company is worth, and if I'm an investor and I put 2 million in this company, which percentage of the company am I going to keep, right? So we are seeing now as investors many companies that have done their first round of investments with some business angels or some individuals, wealthy individuals, that maybe did not take this into account very much in the beginning, and we're seeing really high valuations many times in companies that this initially might look like, for the founder it's good because your company is worth more, but it's not going to help you in future rounds because not a single venture capitalist is going to invest in you if your valuation is way off from what is expected, because they want, for the money they invest, to have a certain percentage of your company so that they can face further dilutions in the future. So this is also something that has to be taken into account from the very beginning, not try to be too greedy and try to really have a reasonable valuation. And that also obviously affects your capacity of raising additional rounds, because you always know when you start in one of these companies that this is not going to be 1 year or 2 years and that's it. You're gonna need more rounds. You always need money as an entrepreneur, and you as an investor want to have a clear picture of where this money might come from, how easy you think the next rounds can be done, and also this has a lot to do with the valuation of the company. And I just added this one for what VCs are looking for. It's called the 4 M's, right? And it's as you can see, it's basically the same. Market, model, momentum, and management. Market meaning you need really a big market opportunity, because you need large markets to really cash out and have the returns that you expect as a VC. Normally VCs, if you invest in like 10 companies, if you're a good VC, maybe you have a great success with 2, you do so and so with another 2, and then the other 6 just you don't make any money. So you expect that the ones that you make money with, they really return a big percentage of your fund. So you want to invest in big markets, in good business models, so that you really can differentiate from whatever is out there. Scalability, momentum, ability to grow very fast. And sometimes you see companies that you envisage yourself 6 years from now, and you think, I won't invest in this company because there's no way I can return my investors with the 10 years of period of my fund the right amount of funding that I'm supposed to give them, because that's part of our deal, right? And finally, as I mentioned, not finally, but first, last but not least, the team, as I mentioned that before. So the management is also crucial. So, well, these are things that, although might seem far away from most of you here in the room, because we are, or you are maybe considering that something of what you're doing can have potential impact or economic impact, and you should be doing that, certainly. This also should be taken into account from the very beginning, because it's going to affect how your project develops later on. So, and I think this is the last one. It's if you ever pitch in front of someone, and we're going to be listening to a lot of pitches, I understand, in the second hour of today, there's a clear structure of what we expect to see in pitches. Obviously, not too many words, not too little, and very clear messages about defining what you do, identifying what's the core competences of your team, the opportunity you're addressing, and why you think your solution is much better than the other ones. Always have the typical chart where you see all the competition, and in the column where you are, you click all the green ones, and the other ones always have like a red one saying they don't match this, or they don't really provide this, and you always provide all the solutions, a right business model to address it, and in the end, what are you asking for, and a very clear message of how you're going to spend that money. And that's basically it. I hope this is food for thought for the future panel. Thank you.